Here's how to install BluMak3D's modular rail system on a Jeep JL or JT, which accommodates a multitude of unique accessories such as our Rotopax jug mounts, fishing rod and shovel holders, and other future products. For this install, you'll need a T40 Torx, 3mm Allen, and a 5mm Allen. A few notes before we get started. The section of the body where the bottom base plate sticks on needs to be clean and free of wax before you stick it. It's best to clean at least that area thoroughly before starting the install. Don't remove the protective film on the double-sided tape on the bottom base until you get to that step in the instructions. The torque spec for all of the M6 hardware in this kit is 10 foot-pounds. If you don't have a small torque wrench, 10 foot-pounds is snug by hand and then just a tiny bit more while holding the wrench handle close to the head and not all the way out on the end. Torque spec for the threaded plates is much lower at 1 foot-pound and only needs to be snug with a small wrench to be fully tightened. If you're installing our fishing rod holder accessory, use this orientation to avoid contact between your fishing reel and the door. To pre-assemble on a workbench, place one threaded plate inside the rail tube and the top plate. Then, loosely thread a bolt into each hole. Guide the plates into the extrusions on the rail while sliding the accessories to the middle of the rail. Use a 3mm Allen wrench to gently tighten one of the bolts on each accessory to keep it from sliding off when you move the rails over to the vehicle. Stack the bottom rail plate onto the bottom base plate and start all of the 6mm bolts. Guide both rails into the bottom rail plate until both are fully seated. Hand tighten the hardware to make sure the rails stay fully seated when moving the assembly to the vehicle. Guide the top rail plate over the rails until the tops are flush. Gently tighten the hardware to keep the rails from falling out of the top rail plate. Moving to the vehicle, remove the two T40 Torx bolts on the side of the cowl. Apply some of the supplied thread locker onto the end of the cowl bolts. Seat the bolt holes in the top base plate into the bolt holes in the cowl. Tighten the bolts through the base and the cowl. The torque spec for this is 71 inch-pounds, which equates to just about 6 foot-pounds, which is snug by hand with no need to crank beyond that. Bring the rail assembly to the vehicle and stack the top rail plate over the top base plate. Torque the hardware to secure the top rail plate to the top base. While holding the assembly to keep it from falling, slightly loosen the rails at the top plate to allow them to slide for adjustment of the bottom base plate. Line the bottom base plate up with the lower body line and pay special attention to the contour at the bottom of the door opening. As you move the bottom base plate up and down for adjustment, you should be able to feel where the two surfaces match up. Look at the radius bend in the bottom plate. It should match the radius in the body. You also want to see a very thin 1/8 to 3/16 inch uniform section of the body between the base and the door opening. While holding the base plate in its best location with one hand, use a 3mm Allen to tighten the rails in the top plate. This is going to set your location for your bottom base plate, so be sure to double check that the placement is precise and that the bolts are tight to keep the rails from sliding. Slide a clean folded towel between the rails and the body to keep the rails from hitting the paint before the next step. Now loosen the hardware on the bottom rail plate to allow the bottom plate and base to slide off the rails as a unit. Use the supplied alcohol pad to ensure that the paint where the bottom base plate will land is clean. Peel the protective film off of the double-sided tape without touching the exposed tape or allowing it to make contact with anything. Slide the base unit back over the rails until they're both fully seated and torque the hardware. Remove the folded cloth, then press the tape on the base against the body to ensure adhesion. To fully bond the tape to the paint, the goal is to exceed 15 pounds per square inch, so put as much of your body weight against the base plate as you can in the center for at least 1 minute and then move to each corner and repeat. All mounting hardware should be tight by this point, which will keep the bottom plate in the right position for VHB bonding. Note that it takes 24 hours for the VHB to cure to 90% of its holding strength, so wait a day before putting substantial weight on the rail mount like a full Rotopax jug. The final step is adjusting the height of your accessories. During setup, be sure to check clearance to make sure the door does not hit your accessories when fully opened. Then, snap the decorative caps onto the top of the rail mounts. If you have any questions or concerns with this or any BluMak3D product, contact us directly at info@BluMak3D.com.